The construction of New York's first all-electric skyscraper is almost complete, and Architectural Digest is one of many publications praising it as a stunning game changer that's an example for new buildings in the city. But does it really deserve all that praise? Let's talk about that while I work on this week's practice sketch. Hello and welcome back, beautiful blooms. I'm Galatunia and I like to ramble about various topics while I learn how to draw. So, a couple of disclaimers. I'm not an architect. I love to build houses and video games and have a relatively unhinged passion for interior design and decorating, so I'm coming at this from the perspective of a fan, kind of like I would for a piece of media. But we're gonna see later in the video why that perspective is still important and why I'm going to encourage you to give your own opinions in the comments, even if you've never thought about the architecture in your hometown before. Architectural Digest published this article, heaping praise on to New York's latest skyscraper project, which is on 505 State Street in Brooklyn. It's a 44-story apartment building that houses both units priced at current market value and affordable housing, with rent as low as 1/4 of that market value. Which, side note, isn't it ironic that affordable housing is now a buzz term used for marketing hype? Like, it's New York. Prices are gonna be high. But if you recognize that affordability is that big a problem, then why not make the entire building affordable to fit your mission statement? You know why. I know why. But they won't say it out loud. Anyway, the point is this skyscraper is supposedly leading the charge for more sustainable design as part of New York City's initiative to be entirely electric reliant by 2026. All of which are good things, don't get me wrong. Progress is slow and the fact that we're actually seeing some is a good thing. However, I couldn't help but kind of roll my eyes while reading this because the overall tone of the article is that this project is a massive innovation that will inspire efforts in other cities. And my first reaction was, this building isn't anything special. I mean, think about it. It's yet another bland skyscraper without any interesting character or colors. It's yet another skyscraper that decided having a rooftop pool is more important than incorporating green architecture. I also found some pictures of the interiors from the New York Times and Design Boom, and just what is innovative about concrete pillars and ceilings? I mean, look at this! This would be depressing to live in and so echoey. Even the green room tooted in these articles with all these plants, they somehow managed to make it look dark and gloomy. How do you have that many plants in a room and it be dark and gloomy? And I have to wonder how many of these design decisions were made because they're actually relaxing and how many were made out of a possible disdain for the people who might live there. Like, maybe I'm crazy, but I can't be the only one who sensed a bit of derision when I read this quote. The staged apartments are welcoming and humble, designed with vintage and second-hand items from places like Craigslist and Kyo, as well as affordable retailers like Target. As she, Rebecca Robinson, told the New York Times, being an all-electric building sort of sets the tone for what you're going to fill it with, how people are going to live. What does that even mean? Even in my podunk town, there's all electric apartment buildings and their existence doesn't magically dictate the decorating styles people choose to live with. Rebecca, we've had electricity for how long now? And I am in no way diminishing the engineering that had to go into this building's internal structure, but the entire celebration around the skyscraper felt so out of touch to me. And it made me think of a topic that a friend suggested back when I first started making these art vlogs. They brought up how a lot of the stuff I was interested in fell under architecture and drafting, two fields that are still dominated by men, and how as early as your primary school years, you might be steered away from it if you don't fall under the descriptive umbrellas that people think of when they envision an architect. Now, this matters because the quickest way to achieve real innovation and change is by allowing various new voices to enter the field. And when I fell down the rabbit hole researching this topic, I found this goes far beyond gender inequality. Generally speaking, there's a global problem with small cores of architectural elites not only refusing to listen to ordinary people about how they want their cities to look, but fighting tooth and nail when those same people make strides towards more sustainable and frankly beautiful buildings rather than the modernist gray cubes the industry's still in love with for whatever reason. But that's worth repeating. People are rebelling and winning. And I think those victories deserve far more accolades than yet another dreary, mismatched priority skyscraper. For example, in Vancouver, Canada, the Squamish Nation are building 11 housing towers known as the Sanok Project. Because this is happening on Indigenous land, they don't have to adhere to Vancouver's zoning laws, and they are running as far as they can with that opportunity. What they have planned is absolutely gorgeous. Look at this! I know they're just concept images, but this does not even remotely compare to the quote-unquote stunning slab of concrete and glass we're praising in New York. And not only that, but all that greenery is going to go a long way in keeping the project sustainable. But don't take my word for it. Just look at these very real buildings you can go visit now, depending on where you live. Like this residential building in Sydney, Australia, was built in 2014, 10 years ago. Sorry, we're old. Gonna have to get used to that one. And according to CNN and skyscrapers.com, it uses 25% less energy than similar complexes. Or even if we go back to Vancouver, this convention center built in 2009 sports a giant rooftop garden with honeybee hives installed to help keep it pollinated. And parts of its structure actually help marine life too. The vertical forest in Italy, Suzlon One Earth in India, heck, the Fukuoka Prefectural International Hall in Japan was built in 1995. All of these and more are reminders that green architecture has been a possibility for decades, with proven results in conserving energy and creating more beautiful spaces to live. Yet here we are praising this. So yeah, I kind of can't help but laugh. But of course, the Sanok project is facing a lot of, frankly, kind of unhinged criticism. But y'all don't need me trying to explain why these accusations are eyebrow-raising at best. So instead, I'm going to link the article from MacLean's. It goes into detail about it all and perfectly explains the root cause behind said concerns. Another example that really got the gears rolling in my head was this video by the Aesthetic City, which goes into detail about the architectural uprising sweeping through Europe, more specifically Sweden and other Scandinavian countries. In that video, they not only give examples of how modern design actually performs worse than traditional architecture, but how the aesthetics of these buildings completely changes how people interact with the area.
One thing to consider when looking at this dark building behind me and all the other ugly buildings that we have seen recently is that today is a beautiful spring day. Sweden is a Nordic country. Most of the year it's quite dark and gloomy. Now imagine this building that you see behind me in October or December. It's really depressing. It of course looks good in computer renderings, but it doesn't fit our local climate. A very sunny and beautiful spring day. Still, despite its central location, there are almost no people here. That is because no one wants to hang out here, and no Stockholmers want to be seen here.
Shocking as it may be to some people, yeah, aesthetics matter! How buildings are designed and decorated has a direct impact on our mental well-being. And if people don't want to be around your area, then everything else is gonna suffer. Businesses will not have customers. People aren't going to want to live there. But what was even more surprising to me was the reaction these people got once they started gaining traction against these modernist buildings.
Journalists who have labeled Uprising as far-right, populist, Trumpist.
Not a coincidence that many people that are in this movement have immigrant background, because it's harder to call us neo-Nazis. And as soon as you cannot label us Nazis, then you have to debate. And then it's not fun anymore because you lose.
I think we could all learn a lot from that last statement. And I'm sorry, but it is absolutely wild to me, as someone living in the US, to watch a Norwegian get called a Trumpist. All because they don't want to look at and live in gray slabs 24/7. What is going on? The sheer classism on display is absolutely bonkers to me. Anyway, I strongly recommend watching that video, and again, I'll leave a link in the description. Probably the coolest thing in it is how those guys you just listened to openly invite everyone to get in contact with them to start their own traditionalist architectural movements, and they really emphasize the importance of sustainability. It's really insightful, and it actually makes me excited to see where their efforts go next. Yes, I'm a nerd, I know this, but I am. It's exciting stuff. Now, everything I just talked about is great. Change is happening, and that deserves praise. Even in the United States, the sheer amount of square footage that achieved LEED certifications in 2022 was immense, and those numbers only continue to grow. But what I've learned from diving into this topic is we could be so much farther along in doing more good if the architectural industry wasn't in the chokehold of rich white guys. Like I said at the beginning of this vlog, the quickest way to achieve real innovation and change is by allowing new voices to enter the field. Now, according to the ACSA in 2019, only 25% of the 208,000 registered architects in the US were women. That means only 52,000 women were registered as architects. And in a more personal dive into how that looks for day-to-day expectations in the field, there's this 2016 article from the New York Times titled, "I am not the decorator," where 200 plus women in the field were surveyed. The answers were all, sadly, unsurprising, but still disappointing. Some talk about how they had to partner with their husbands in order to earn a shred of respect. Others spoke about how women often get pushed into interior decorating because it's seen as a softer profession. One woman mentioned that in 2016, there were only 300 Black women registered as architects in the entirety of the United States. 300. And another poignant comment discussed how one firm said, hiring Zaha Hadid, a woman who won the Pritzker Prize in 2004, was a risk. A risk? What risk? Huh? And the list just goes on and on and on. Even when you look up the subject on YouTube, the top videos call the profession a trap and what alternatives to look for. And when you combine these anecdotes with the ones from the Squamish Nation Sanaa Project and the architectural uprising in Europe, it is very clear that there is far more than zoning laws at play that is holding us all back from making substantial change into how we build our cities. So yeah, that skyscraper in Brooklyn, not worth celebrating. It is not a model of sustainability. It is the bare minimum. It's just another depressing skyscraper with misplaced priorities, and we can do better. What do you think about all this? Have you ever given thought about how buildings just look where you live? Have you noticed how you interact with your city differently depending on the appearance? Were you steered away from this profession despite having an interest in it? Any thoughts or stories that you're comfortable sharing, let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, see you then!